Obviously, I'm a weeaboo, and ever since I was young, I've loved animation from the East and the West. One of the main reasons that animation fans like myself will cite as the source for their passion is the medium's total creative freedom. It's why people have grown tired of the corporate trend of bragging about how realistic the animation looks, which is the reason that you make movies live action and not animated, and instead are praising media that plays with the art form in inventive ways, like the Spider-Verse movies or the Netflix series Arcane. The 2021 film Belle made waves online for similar reasons. It incorporated 3D animation not just because it was more cost efficient or looked realistic, but to set up a contrast between the vibrant online world and the mundane real world of its protagonist Suzu. Both art styles fit their respective settings, and the filmmakers used the capabilities of computer animation to their maximum effect in a lot of stunning scenes. I think my favorite visual scene in the movie is Suzu floating over the crowd as they sing her melody in unison. The contrast between the massive crowd glowing with light and Suzu, a meek schoolgirl who is now overwhelmed to the point of tears, effectively conveys how average and unimportant Suzu feels, yet what a massive influence she has with her music. It's a beautiful scene that I'd be happy to go back and watch on YouTube, admire the animation, and then turn it off, because the rest of the movie is hot garbage. Sorry, I realized that was a bit of a tonal whiplash, but now you know what it's like to watch Belle, which brings you into gorgeous animation moments only to send you crashing down from cloud 9 when it throws you back into the plot. This conflict tormented my soul as I watched Belle. While the animation was getting better, the writing was getting worse and worse. I felt compromised as an artist. What was I supposed to do? Should I engage my criticisms of this movie's poorly executed story, or should I just turn my brain off and enjoy the pretty colors? But I'm an intellectual, a YouTuber, not a baby watching sensory videos. This is art that's supposed to challenge my perceptions of the world around me. But the writing just doesn't feel like doing that today, and its quality widely varies throughout the movie. Belle is presented in a stylistically advanced way, but it was hard for me to decide whether or not it was a good film because the substance of the story was so lacking. The premise of the movie is deceptively simple compared to how jammed the plot becomes by the end. Our protagonist, Suzu Naito, is your average shy high school girl. She's a very kind and thoughtful person for her age, but constantly sells herself short and almost reaches marionette levels of not being able to talk to other humans. But one day, everything changes when she joins the U app, a virtual world that scans your body and creates an avatar that reveals your inner self so that you can interact with others as you truly are. You may not be able to start over in the real world, but you can start over with you. That's a quote from the movie that I think makes the website sound very ominous, but Suzu just loves it because she gets to be a VTuber. The site does give Suzu a new start. Now that she's a beautiful anime girl, she becomes more confident and gains the inner strength needed to sing again. With the unsolicited help of her friend Hiro, she becomes an idol in the world of You. And the movie follows her struggle to deal with her sudden fame, as well as learn to be more confident with herself in the real world rather than hide behind her virtual identity. That is, until a pivotal concert, where her show is interrupted by a battle between a group of online vigilantes called the Justices and a mysterious user known as the Dragon/the Beast. The mystery of who the Beast is takes center stage from this point on in the story, leaning into the Beauty and the Beast angle as Belle tries to protect the misunderstood Beast from a Gaston-esque character and his angry internet mob. It's the moment that the plot deviates from the path I predicted it would take. There's a rival U pop star named Peggy Sue that is shown jealously accusing Belle of being talentless and not deserving her fame, which I assumed would be the main antagonist preventing Belle from believing in herself and pursuing her dreams. But while this storyline is a bit overplayed, I almost wish the movie had taken advantage of the clear setup for this conflict instead of the underdeveloped plot we got in the end. It makes the first 20 or so minutes one long exposition until we finally introduce the main conflict between Belle and the Beast, an exposition that's too long for a 2-hour movie that tries to take on too many things at once. The core of the story, Belle and the Beast conflict, gets drowned out by vaguely related subplots that steal precious development time that could have greatly improved its execution. It leaves for a poorly executed story of plot conveniences, pointless characters, and rushed arcs. I think discussing the failures of that core plot first before dealing with the smaller issues caused by the story subplots will help you understand why the writing is such a mess. Belle and the Beast relationship incorporates elements of the original French version, but mostly follows the conventions established by the Disney reimagining. And okay, petty tangent incoming, but Disney's Beauty and the Beast is my favorite princess movie and I've watched it too many times, so I know the scenes pretty well and I immediately became suspicious of Belle with how closely it mirrored the visual language and even dialogue of the Disney version. This happens somewhat throughout all of the interactions between anime Belle and the Beast at his castle, but the most obvious similarities are during a scene where Belle tries to learn more about the Beast after initially being rejected by him. It takes a lot of shots from the West Wing scene of the Disney film. Belle opens doors to discover a torn portrait that reveals more about the Beast's true identity, has her attention caught by a mysterious object which she tries to touch, then accidentally alerts the Beast to her presence, which causes him to tower over her with specific angled shots to make her look small. Both Beasts then scream "Get out," saying basically the same line and moving in the same way. We cut to a wide shot of the palace hallway as Belle fearfully runs past the camera, then cut back to the Beast with the camera slowly panning out as he buries his head in his hands, regretting that he let his anger get the better of him. I just kept getting more and more shocked as I actually played these scenes side by side and realized just how many similarities there are. I don't think there's any denying that the filmmakers modeled this scene after the Disney version, but it's arguable whether or not this was drawing inspiration or stealing another film's ideas. I feel that it crosses the line and is artistic plagiarism, but I do already have a negative outlook on Belle, so that probably doesn't help my opinion. Okay, I'm done being a bitter Beauty and the Beast fan. As this scene demonstrated though, Belle and the Beast's interactions are similar to that of the Disney retelling. The Beast hides away from the rest of you in his virtual castle, Belle shows kindness to him which makes him a better person, and the two of them fall in love. The problems start to occur when the movie tries to repeat these beats on a superficial level, but changes the context surrounding them, rendering them either emotionally shallow or confusing. The Beast fits the archetype of a mysterious monster and outcast from society that's presented in the Disney version. The internet at large hates the Beast and spreads paranoid rumors about him similar to the peasants of the provincial town. The users of You are stirred up by the leader of the Justices, named Justin, who uses his masculine powers of intimidation and violence, similar to Gaston. Belle uses this to critique mob mentality and the modern day witch hunts of the internet, with Justin even having a doxing gun that allows him to reveal the identity of anyone on You. This all makes narrative sense and is an accurate criticism of mob mentality online, though it's never delivered with nuance and doesn't offer much new to say about the subject besides the fact that harassing someone online is a bad thing to do. I mean, there's no introspective look into how this phenomenon occurs or how it can be effectively prevented. Literally everyone on You is just like, "We hate the Beast, grah!" You know? But that's just looking at this aspect of the story in isolation. The changes to the Beast character only complicate matters more. In this film, the reason the Beast is being pursued by the Justices in the first place is because he has an extensive history of getting into fights with people on You. They state in the movie that he has fought nearly 400 people, but it's not like Twitter arguments. He gets into physical fights in the VR world. It's unclear what the real world implications are of this, if he actually physically harmed these people, or if it is just a representation of them having a verbal argument online. Like, I really can't tell you, and the unexplained sci-fi logic is a problem throughout this film, but one thing at a time, folks. Anyway, the point remains that I do not remember Disney's Beast roaming the streets of the village at night and getting into fistfights with strangers like he's at a Denny's parking lot. The mob of villagers were unjustified in their hatred of him and had no reason to storm the castle because he never posed any danger to them living as a societal outcast. While Justin's full mobilization of the internet against this one person is uncalled for and doxing the Beast is immoral, why is there anything wrong with them trying to simply report or ban him for harassing hundreds of people online and endangering Belle at her concert? Despite this, the movie treats them like the cartoonish villains of the Disney version, even though their reasoning isn't completely unfounded. It also complicates things when Belle searches for the Beast castle on her own, knowing that she's leaving herself vulnerable to a dangerous stranger that's harassed hundreds of people online. Luckily, it turns out Belle and the Beast become besties in like 10 minutes anyway. Belle rushes us through two scenes of Belle and the Beast together where they spend most of their time fighting before Belle sings him a song and it's time for the ballroom dance. Now we have the inverse problem of the last segment where a lack of characterization prevents these moments from having much impact. It's unclear how they truly feel about each other besides, "You're nice to me, so I'll be nice to you," or why they suddenly care about each other. Probably because we never get any real conversations between these two before the Beast castle is raided. I'll give credit to the film that it does follow the adage of show don't tell by focusing more on scenes of the Beast rescuing Belle from the Justices, or Belle putting her own identity at risk to protect the Beast's secret. That's definitely a strength that sets Belle apart from weaker stories that have their characters assert their love for each other in words but never back it up to the audience in their actions. Still, sometimes it's better to start out with two characters connecting verbally and then showing actions that give weight to those words, or even just having one conversation where the characters open up to each other so that their actions feel real. The way it's presented in Belle feels robotic, like an AI at replicating the standard beats of a love story without understanding how to properly set up these moments. It works on a base level, but doesn't give me the strong attachment to their relationship that's necessary for making the climax work. Speaking of the climax, we get the kill the beast scene about 15 minutes after Belle and the Beast ballroom dance. When Justin interrogated Belle about the Beast's identity, he accidentally dropped a rose petal with code on it when rescuing Belle from the private chat room Justin had her in, and Justin used the code on this petal to hack into his castle server. I guess, I don't know. I wish I was big enough to get sponsored because this would be a great moment to drop. If only the Beast had strong password security, he could have stopped Justin from hacking into his private location. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. This part's only supposed to be about the Beauty and the Beast plot. I'll get back on track. It's just, this is when things start to fall off the rails. The movie up to this point was at least cohesive and enjoyable, but now things straight up stop making sense. So the Justices raid the Beast castle, and Belle arrives in the aftermath. This is actually where Belle branches off from the Beauty and the Beast story structure and starts doing its own thing with the plot, as Belle tries to convince the Beast to take refuge with her, but he runs off on his own, seemingly out of a fear of getting her involved in his mess. Suzu then meets up with her tech friend Hiro to search the internet for any traces of the Beast, and they finally unveil the Beast's real identity when they discover a live stream of his brother Tomo singing the song Belle performed during the ballroom dance scene. One of the biggest hints to the Beast's identity are the bruises on his cape. Suzu and Hiro watch as Tomo's dad bursts into the room and begins verbally berating Tomo, who is too sucked into the virtual world to notice until his dad's anger reaches a violent point. It's then that his older brother Kei steps in, shoving his dad away and shielding Tomo as their dad shouts at them for being miserable failures and how they should just get out of his house. Suzu and Hiro realize that the used software gave Kei the Beast persona to reveal his inner strength like it did with Suzu and Belle, and the bruises represent Kei's emotional scars carrying the burden of his dad's abuse. This is an interesting plot twist and makes for one of the best scenes in Belle. Kei's dad's abusive anger is portrayed in a realistic way, getting across the gut-wrenching feeling of his cruelty without being gratuitous or melodramatic. I also appreciate that the story doesn't show Kei's dad using physical violence and has most of his abuse be verbal, because I think there's a societal idea that physical abuse is worse or real abuse compared to emotional abuse. But this scene is still difficult to watch, and it shows that verbal threats are just as cruel as physical violence. Once Kei's dad leaves, Suzu feels compelled to help after witnessing such a cruel scene. Tomo's livestream has a call-in function, and Suzu tries to explain that she's Belle and help the boys find a shelter from their dad. This exchange is another one of the film's strongest moments, although the execution is admittedly a bit odd. Like, Suzu's attempt to reach out to Tomo and Kei is interrupted when 3 random people join in the stream, make child abuse jokes, and then immediately leave. I get the point they're trying to make about how being behind a screen enables people to say cruel things and have less empathy than they would in real life, but I guess I'd like it if it flowed a bit better with the scene. Anyway, these commenters cause Kei to immediately turn on Suzu, arguing that her desire to help him and his brother is only empty sympathy that won't result in any actual change for his situation. This is probably Belle's most complex point raised so far. Everything up to this point has been, in my opinion, justified yet slightly shallow commentary about the internet. Ideas like everyone is obsessed with projecting the perfect image online, and people are attracted to negativity online. I wouldn't know anything about that. Belle just likes to identify these problems and present them in a realistic way, but doesn't comment on them in any way that challenges my own conceptions, instead saying that they're bad things that we shouldn't do. Kei's argument that Suzu's good intentions actually aren't helping him at all is a point that's open to a lot of moral complexity. Especially when you see abuse cases online, it's hard to know how to help these people when you don't know them personally and don't have knowledge about the specifics of the situation. Obviously, doing absolutely nothing and pretending not to care is completely immoral, but you don't want to inadvertently make the situation more difficult for the victim. This is a heavy topic and a difficult situation that doesn't always have easy answers, and I'm just looking at it from a surface level with limited knowledge, mostly from therapists sharing general information about these concepts online. I was interested to see how Belle would address this topic, considering that Suzu and her friends all strongly want to help Kei, but he's already ended the call with them and is expressly against their intervention. So while yes, I am not an expert, the solution that the film presents to this dilemma seems so obviously wrong that even people with a moderate amount of knowledge like me can tell that it's a bad idea. Unfortunately, Belle is not here to examine the different facets of this topic and engage the audience in a thoughtful discussion. They want to give Suzu a hero moment and a ribbon-on-top ending to the story. It's not an outright terrible conclusion, as it does give at least Suzu's arc a satisfying end, but it feels disappointingly shallow and portrays a dangerous way of responding to child abuse as a noble honorable sacrifice. I'll delve into the full sequence of events as we go on, but the gist is that Suzu decides to reveal her personal identity on Yu so that Kei realizes she and Belle are the same person while holding a gigantic concert to grab his attention. Kei logs back onto the call with Suzu and is about to give her address, only for his dad to find out about the live stream and shut it down. Now everyone is afraid that Kei's dad could do something really bad to them, so the group advises Suzu to travel alone to a city hours away and confront Kei's dad on her own. Suzu is a high school girl, and Kei's dad is a grown man that is not afraid to use violence on his own children. The fact that none of the adults standing in the room with her, or even her own dad, go with her to ensure her safety is super reckless. But again, we'll take some time to get into all of the details because yeah, it just gets worse the more you think about it. After Kei hangs up on Suzu, her friend Shinobu tells her that she should put on a performance in Yu as Suzu to reveal her true self to Kei and get him to trust her. Despite Hiro's protests, she works up the courage and forces Justin to reveal herself in front of all of Yu. Everyone watches with bated breath as she sings a song asking for the beast to come back to her. The writing of this film is so odd to me because sometimes it uses a lot of subtlety when delivering character moments and doesn't tell the audience what to think, but at the same time, some of the scenes are delivered in such a ham-fisted Disney Channel-esque way. Luckily, this exact thing happens back to back during this musical number, so I can quickly explain what I mean. At the end of Suzu's song, we get this beautiful shot of her gazing at the moon, her mouth open in shock. We realize what she's thinking about as we see a flashback to her childhood. A major part of Suzu's character is that when she was young, she and her mom were at a riverside, and supposedly a flash flood occurred that left a little girl stranded in the middle of the water. Seemingly, rescue personnel hadn't arrived yet, so Suzu's mom swam into the river to save this girl's life, but she drowned in the process. I mean, I have a few logical questions, like were none of the people there willing to help make this dangerous rescue mission safer, or how was she able to get the girl back to land but not herself? Personally, I just think this scenario would make more sense if maybe there was a car accident or a fire, and Suzu's mom was the only one there to go into the fire and lead this girl out before getting crushed or something. My killjoy nitpicking aside, the point of this backstory is to define Suzu's character arc. At first, Suzu resents her mom for sacrificing herself for a stranger, feeling like she abandoned the daughter she loved for someone she didn't even know. It's what causes Suzu to not be able to sing for a while, as we see in a montage earlier in the movie that Suzu's mom inspired her love of music. This montage was another one of the film's high points, and shows its ability to convey emotions in a natural way. But now, as Suzu sings in front of a gigantic crowd of strangers as herself, purely out of her desire to save Kei, she remembers her mom's act of sacrifice and is left awestruck, finally understanding what it's like to give up everything for someone else. Not only is the writing solid during this moment, but the animation and sound design complements it perfectly. Everything is colored in a deep blue, and the slow zoom on Suzu's face while a simple yet hopeful cadence echoes in the background makes you feel the realization dawning over her. That's why she did it. A lesser anime would have Suzu say that line as a voiceover in her head because they think the audience is dumb and it would make me cringe. But that's not how Belle does things. At least not all the time. I really don't like the scene after this. It's not even particularly bad, though it probably feels much worse than it is compared to the quiet, artistic, fleeting sincerity of that last moment. Suzu starts singing a la 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 melody and a golden orb starts glowing in front of her chest. Then literally everyone in the audience starts sobbing and singing along with her and shooting golden orbs up to the sky. I guess we really didn't have to worry about people rejecting Suzu because she wasn't a pink-haired anime goddess, since they all changed their minds pretty much instantly. Then the film starts dropping all these plot twists out of nowhere. These random choir ladies that sang with Suzu, they were all actually friends with her dead mom! You know how Shinobu was always checking in on Suzu? That's because he was actually the one to tell her to stop crying when her mom died. Justin is actually a 40-year-old man still living in his parents' basement. Okay, that one's not true. I mean, I don't have any objections with these twists themselves. It's not like any of them don't make sense or anything. It's just kind of funny how they whip them all out in this one montage. Then we cut to Justin and he's going full anime villain mode like, "This is impossible! Nobody has survived being unveiled before!" And all of his sponsors immediately pull out. Sorry, Justin, your doxing crossed the line for Bear Steel Co. The power of the audience's love brings Suzu's wail back to life, and she turns back into Belle to finish off the song. Yes, this scene is visually stunning, and yes, the music sounds beautiful, but it's a lot at once to have the crowd all be moved to tears and immediately support Belle after revealing her secret identity she's been hiding for months, then for us to find out all these plot twists, and for Justin to be defeated and lose all of his sponsors. I feel bad for finding it a bit laughable, but it just reminds me of Mitchie singing This Is Me in Camp Rock, and while normally I wouldn't harp on something for being a bit melodramatic, especially when music is involved, it's frustrating when you know a film is capable of conveying emotion in a more mature way without forcing you to suspend your disbelief. In the end, this message gets through to Kei, and he reconnects the call with Suzu. He's literally mid-sentence telling Suzu what their address is when his dad discovers the live stream documenting his abuse and bursts into the room, shoving his kids away before angrily shutting down the stream. So Hiro does some image enhancing and audio scanning like a true hacker, and the group is able to figure out where the boys' condo is located in Tokyo. I mean, this really does turn into a movie hacker scene. They start high-fiving each other and having little victory celebrations whenever they figure out the next clue. I understand that they're happy about their success, but it just feels a little odd to me how lighthearted they are considering the situation. The way it's portrayed feels like a cool puzzle for them to solve when, you know, two kids might get beat up by their dad because of their interference. Once they figure out the location, one of the choir ladies calls emergency personnel to do a wellness check, but they say that they have to wait 48 hours until they can perform the check, which I think is a real Japanese law that the film included. I'm not sure what personnel they called for help since they only asked for a wellness check, but I feel like if they showed the police the video footage they have of Kei and Tomo being physically assaulted by their dad, they'd be able to get them to head to their house right away. Still, I could be completely wrong about that, and if a 48-hour waiting period is the law in Japan, then there's not much they can do to work past that. But their reaction to this is what really doesn't make sense to me. Suzu, understandably, gets upset when hearing this and rushes out of the room, wanting to get to Kei's house as fast as possible so that she can protect the boys from a violent outburst from their dad. Now, personally, I think one of the adult women in this situation should have stopped her and said, "Suzu, you have every right to feel concerned for Tomo and Kei, and we will figure out a way to help them as fast as we can. But running off to their house hours away all on your own without a thought out plan is a reckless action that's only going to put you and them in danger." But nope, two of the choir ladies go running out after her so that they can drive her to the train station. They say in the car how there's no flights available to Tokyo and driving will take too long, so they decide to go to the train station, but only Suzu actually gets on the train. You guys know that multiple people can ride on a train at the same time? So there she goes. Suzu travels hours away to a condo in Tokyo that she doesn't even know for sure is the correct house to fight off a grown man from attacking his kids. And all the adults, even her dad, who she didn't explain the situation to until she got on the train, watch from the sidelines because they trust Suzu to handle this on her own just fine. Suzu finds Tomo and Kei in the middle of a back alley, but their dad isn't far behind. Now we get Suzu's grand plan of action to save Kei and Tomo, the one that all of the adults in this situation trusted her to come up with and carry out all on her own, and that's to hug them really hard. I don't know, maybe we shouldn't have left the teenage girl to solve child abuse all by herself. Suzu gets frighteningly close to being severely injured in this scene, as Kei's dad throws her around and even scratches her face. Somehow, her staring at him is enough to intimidate him, so he runs away and the day is saved. Kei realizes that Suzu really is Belle because her touch felt the same in real life as it did in You, and I didn't mention this beforehand, but these romantic moments are starting to feel kind of weird now that we know Kei is a 14-year-old boy and Suzu is 17 years old. That's like a high school junior dating an 8th grader. Kei tells Suzu that because of her, he's going to, quote, fight back, which is a concerning thing for a child of an abusive parent to say. They all hug it out, then Suzu goes home to sing some songs with her friends, and we never hear anything else about what happened to Kei and Tomo or if they were able to get shelter from their dad. I guess all Kei needed to learn was that if he's being abused, he should just fight back. Honestly, I don't know why we didn't figure this out sooner. There are a lot of things wrong with this conclusion. I think it's pretty obvious that on a logical level, this is not a safe or productive way to respond to a child abuse situation. Why would you ever send a teenage girl hours away to a big city to confront an insulter on her own? How would she even know the proper course of action? And even so, how could she properly execute it? Beyond that, even if you brought the group of adults along to go to this house, I still find that action to be questionable. All they've seen of this family are 2 clips of the dad verbally assaulting his sons. There could be a lot more complex factors to this situation that could affect how they respond that they have no idea about. It's not a one and done drive over there and snatch the kids away. You have no idea how this man is going to respond when a bunch of strangers show up to his doorstep saying they know you're abusing your kids. It could escalate to a point that you aren't equipped to handle without professional personnel to help. And they don't even show Suzu connecting Kei or Tomo with a support network so that they have somewhere to go while their dad is angrily roaming the streets. All of this is very ironic to me because Kei's speech calls out people that express their sympathies towards those that are struggling but don't take real action to help them because they just want to feel like good people. And yet, that's a lot like how the film treats his abuse. It's more about making Suzu look good than helping Kei overcome his problems. Suzu and her friends congratulate themselves as they figure out Kei and Tomo's location like they're winning a video game level. The story doesn't really care about if Kei and Tomo are safe because we don't even get a glimpse of their fate after the fact. It's all about how much it helped Suzu become a better person and how heroic she was. Look, I do have some trouble criticizing the conclusion of Suzu's arc because while it doesn't make any sense in a real-world context, it does make for strong character moments. Suzu and her dad's discussion on the train about the power of the kindness that her mom instilled in her is a touching scene, and the image of Suzu shielding Kei and Tomo serves as a powerful culmination of her growth from an unconfident girl to someone who fights for what she believes in. I mean, is it okay for the writers to ask me to suspend my disbelief a bit and ignore that this would never work in real life just to enjoy a great character moment? I just feel that it doesn't work in this situation, and my major thought throughout this scene is this doesn't make any sense. Up until this point, the story has presented Kei and Tomo's mistreatment in a grounded way that's accurate to how the situation would unfold in real life. It wants the audience to take this seriously, even making societal commentary about how people react to it in the real world. It's just tonal whiplash to then portray a completely unrealistic solution to this realistic conflict, and it weakens the audience's investment in the character arc you want to get across. Also, I don't like how this ending turns Kei into an objective for Suzu. He feels a bit wasted in this finale and like he loses his individuality as a character, instead just serving as a tool to complete Suzu's growth. I think the anime Erased is a better example of how to tackle a heavy subject like child abuse while still creating an engaging plot. Not going into too many spoilers, because this anime is definitely one that keeps you watching until the next episode to see what happens. It follows the main character Satoru, who has the power to travel back in time when a disastrous event occurs to prevent it from happening. He gets sent back to his childhood and tries to save a young girl named Kayo, who in the present timeline gets kidnapped one night and is found dead days later. Part of Kayo's vulnerability comes from having an abusive mom, Akemi, and Satoru works to gradually separate her from her mom so that she can have a safe, stable caregiver. Importantly, Satoru rarely confronts Akemi about her mistreatment of Kayo on his own, and makes sure to bring his mom and professional personnel along whenever they try to legally separate Kayo from Akemi. Besides that, Satoru's acts of intervention mostly revolve around not directly fighting Akemi, but trying to keep Kayo at his house as much as possible so that he can ensure she's safe, since he knows he doesn't have the ability to properly confront her on his own. Additionally, Satoru still has the mind of an adult, even though he's in a child's body, and he has the power to see the future and jump between timelines. Yeah, it helps that the plot has more of a thriller mystery tone than a grounded drama trying to dissect abuse, so the audience can suspend their disbelief more and not take everything as genuine advice. Although it does fall into some of the same traps as Belle by putting most of the burden on Satoru to save everyone, which is unrealistic and unhealthy in my opinion, Erased still presents an engaging character arc for Satoru where he learns to embrace his heroism. It also gives a gut-wrenching look into the effects of child abuse, and gives Kayo a defined character and important role in the story beyond a sad kid that needs to be saved. It just feels a lot more developed and cohesive than Suzu and Kei's rushed storyline, and doesn't inadvertently advise the audience to do dangerous things when responding to these kinds of situations. Belle and the Beast's journey contains some good moments, but it fails to get me truly invested in their relationship or build to a cohesive goal like in Disney's Beauty and the Beast. And I think one major part of the problem is that Belle tries to tackle too many themes and characters in its story rather than giving Belle and the Beast some well-needed time to develop together. There are a lot of plot lines in this film that, looking back on them, could have been cut or at least reduced. They try to build up a whole mystery surrounding who the Beast is, spending time on various red herrings throughout the story, but it doesn't really further Suzu's character or provide any unique internet commentary besides that the internet is desperate to know everything about everyone else. The Beast reveal isn't really about trying to guess the answer to the mystery. It works because it gives us further depth into a character we're connected to. It's not the same type of satisfaction that you get from solving a whodunit, so we don't need to play around with these obviously fake answers. Suzu's friends also get a little too much screen time compared to her time with the Beast. There's a subplot about her friends Ruka and Shinjiro overcoming their embarrassment and confessing their feelings for one another. It's cute and fun to watch, but it doesn't fit into Suzu's journey to become a kinder, more confident person in any way. I mean, the subplot only vaguely connects by having a message about being honest with the people you care about. Still, Ruka and Shinjiro remain pretty flat throughout, and there's a lot of fluff to it that could be cut. Now, Shinobu just plain confuses me. The only reason he's friends with Suzu is because he's concerned about her since her mom died at a young age. He literally says at the end of the film he's been waiting for her to become more confident in herself so that they could actually have a normal relationship instead of him just being her free therapist. What is the point? Is there a point? When you try to rationalize the events in You with real-world logic, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and the film doesn't help you understand it better. For example, how did the Beast create a hidden castle? Is it like a private server within You? Did he hack You's system? What does it mean for the real world that he's physically beating up strangers on You? Similarly, Hiro's technological abilities border on sci-fi nonsense, like searching the entire web for the secret song Belle sang to the Beast, or image enhancing a picture of Tomo to see Belle's reflection in his eyes. You have to let a lot of conveniences like that slide while watching this film. It's not that I even particularly hate these subplots on their own, but they belong in a different movie. Right now, they're sucking up too much time that could have better fleshed out Belle and the Beast so that we could feel more invested in their climax. And it's not like the story we have at the moment is irreparably flawed. Some of it works well with how it's presented in the film. I think refocusing some of the minor plot threads to better reflect the main message of sacrificial love would make the writing a lot more effective. Introducing the Beast earlier in the story would also help the plot feel more focused, as for the first 20 minutes or so, it seems like it's going to focus on Suzu's journey with handling her sudden fame, when that doesn't really affect her relationship with the Beast. She's never all that tempted by her celebrity status. She doesn't even ask for Hiro to make her famous in the first place, besides being afraid to reveal her identity, so I don't think it needs to be focused on as heavily in the film. I think giving Belle and the Beast at least one conversation scene where they open up about their personalities and insecurities would help their connection feel more real and not like a one-sided quest for Suzu to prove her heroism. Also, I think some changes could be made just to make the plot a little more realistic. Age up Kei to be in high school so that the semi-romantic moments between him and Belle don't feel so weird in hindsight. Going even further, make Kei Suzu's classmate at high school that she's at least familiar with, even if they aren't close friends. If Kei is at least in Suzu's area and she has some understanding of his home life, it'd be much more reasonable for her to travel there in person than going to a stranger's house hours away all by herself. In some ways, revealing the Beast as a person that she knows in real life is even more shocking than a kid on the internet, because she might incorrectly assume that she knows this person wouldn't act like the Beast just based on what she sees at school each day. It still fits into the film's message that we never know what people hide behind their online personas, and demonstrates the way that it allows someone to manipulate their own reality. Now, this suggestion is starting to get into AU territory that doesn't completely match the story's original intention, so maybe I should just write a crappy fanfic or something. But I thought an interesting angle the film could take would be to make Shinobu the Beast. He's kind of a shallow, underused character in the current edition, but imagine that he spends his time caring for Suzu while hiding the abuse he endures at home out of a fear of burdening her. It would serve as a surprising twist and demonstrate that even people that seem put together and like their lives are going perfectly fine can be hiding a lot of pain that they don't show the outside world. Suzu might assume that Shinobu has a perfect life from the brief glimpses she sees into his world, only to realize by the end of the story that he's in as much need of help as she is. I think a lot of stories portray abuse victims as being very obviously depressed and angry about their situation like Kei, which is sometimes true, but I can speak from personal experience that sometimes the very cheerful, expressive, Kind-hearted people are the ones who have a lot of pain to cope with. I don't know. I just feel that tying together Suzu and Shinobu from the beginning only to reveal more secrets about each character has the potential for a more engaging, unique story. But that's not the story we got, is it? What we got was Belle, a film that has consistently beautiful animation but varies wildly in its writing quality. At the beginning of this video, I questioned if I could still call this movie good because of its impressive animation rather than its weak storytelling moments. And I just wrote an 11-page script about why the story disappoints me, so I'm gonna say the answer to that question is no. Belle has its touching moments, but I just don't know what to make of it overall. Comparing the highlights of the beginning, like the montage of Suzu's mom, to the lows of the end, like Suzu's self-destructive rescue plan, feels like night and day. I can't in good confidence say this film is thoroughly great because of that, but I can say that I now know the Cannes Film Festival is a complete scam because this movie got a 14-minute standing ovation when it premiered there. It barely got a, it's alright I guess, out of me by the end of this rant. Ah! Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time, bye!